Yo, welcome back everybody to a brand new video here on the second channel. It's time we're going to look at some more deck lists from Japan for Temporal Forces decks. Of course, pre-releases are this weekend, and I thought it'd be a great time to kind of get hyped for the pre-releases by looking at some more crazy rogue decks from Japan with Temporal Forces out. Now, of course, we are going to look at Iron Valiant decks. I did want to see how Iron Valiant EX was doing in Temporal Forces, but we are going to look at the other decks here, which are decks that are just not listed on the front page of PokeCookBook's deck recipes. So we're going to look at these. We're going to see what else Japan has cooked up. We did look at the other decks in one of the last videos we did, but there are a lot more decks that have been added now in the past couple weeks since I've done that other video. So I'm excited here to look at some decks here in Japan to kind of get a look at what decks are doing good in Japan right now, what people have cooked up with Temporal Forces. And like I said, pre-releases are this weekend for Temporal Forces. We're all about to get our hands on Temporal Forces, and it's going to be time to build decks, trade for cards you need, and kind of just see what is going to be good. So I'm excited for all that. And of course, if y'all are new here to the second channel, make sure to subscribe down below. We're on the road to 12,000 subs, and you can leave a like on the video if you go on to enjoy. Let me know what your favorite deck that I looked at in today's video was, and I'll leave a link to PokeCookBook here, the site that I use to find all of these lists from Japan. All right, now I did want to start things off by looking at some Iron Valiant decks, because Iron Valiant, I think, does get a little bit worse with rotation. I think that it does get nice that Iron Valiant gets a little bit stronger with all these Buddy Poffin decks being popular now. See, now you have more outs to attacking low HP basics with Tachyon Bits. The problem is Iron Valiant does lose Escape Rope, so it loses a switching card, and it also loses Battle VIP, so the ability to just pop off in one turn is not as accessible. So I still wanted to see how Iron Valiant was doing in Japan. So there's not as many decks here to look at, but I did want to look at them nonetheless. So obviously the main way to play Iron Valiant is probably going to be in the Future Box deck, being able to boost Iron Valiant's damage output with Iron Crown. It does make sense. Iron Crown does let Iron Valiant do more damage. I mean, Iron Valiant is already doing 200 damage, so with the Iron Crown, you're already going to be hitting some pretty good numbers, and with your own ability, you can increase the damage even more. You can accelerate energy to the Iron Valiant with the Miraidon, and obviously you have the Reboot Pod to help you get there too. And that's basically just like Future Box, just minus the other attackers, but it's more or less just an Iron Valiant deck, and honestly, Iron Valiant by itself with Future Box doesn't sound like a terrible deck at all. I like it. And then we have Entei Valiant. Now, Entei Valiant is an archetype that we all know is pretty good right now in our meta. It's a decent deck. It catches play, it wins tournaments, but Entei Valiant definitely seems like it gets a bit weaker with rotation. And again, that's probably because of Battle VIP rotating. You can no longer, get all these Pokemon out in one turn. You do have the Techno Radar, which is still very good because you can get Iron Valiant out for free with the Techno Radars, but finding Enteis and Squawkabilly is a little bit more challenging when you can't Battle VIP as easily for them anymore. But Entei Valiant I still think is good. I mean, in this meta where you're trading very effectively against these other big two-price decks, a deck like Entei Valiant seems decent. And honestly, despite losing Escape Rope, which is a bit of a big loss, right? You do lose one of your switching cards, so now you already have less switch in the deck. You only get to play 4 switch and 4 switch card, but you can play Prime Catcher. And, I guess there's Jet Energy, which can, help a little bit too. But yeah, like I said, you are losing your switches, but you still have the power of this deck still. I mean, it's still a very powerful deck at the end of the day, right? Tachyon Bits plus Burning Rondo is a pretty good combo. Entei is a really strong attacker. Goldengo still might be a popular deck in the new format. And again, you're just going to be trading against all these big basic EX decks, something like that Raging Bolt Sandy Shocks deck, or, even something against Charizard. When you have TM Devo, you might be okay, especially if Bibarel Charizard is going to be the way to play it. You can actually counteract the Bibarels pretty easily when Bidoof only has 60 HP, so I could still see Entei Valiant still being a good deck. Now, this deck, like I said, it does gain a Prime Catcher, which is a new switching card, and a Gusting card in one. That's one card that the deck does gain, but again, you do lose the Escape Rope, which kind of sucks. We got another Entei Valiant list here to look at. This one did get top 8. The one we just looked at got second place even. And this build here is, kind of the same. We got all the switching cards, the Prime Catcher, pretty similar 60. Another Entei Valiant list here, not playing that Moltres in the deck, is playing double Squawkabilly, which I kind of like too, Squawkabilly. It makes it easier to find Squawkabilly on the first turn when you play 2 of them. You just have a higher chance of starting with it. And Squawkabilly is part of this deck's kind of engine of popping off, so I do like the idea of Squawkabilly. The supporter engine in this build is also a little bit more simplified. We just see the researches, the Colress, and the Iono. There's no other new supporters in the other build that we looked at here. Did have the Morty in the deck and Arven and stuff, so it did have more supporters going on, but this one keeps it a little bit more simple. We got another future box build here. Once again, playing the Iron Valiant. You do have the one of Iron Hands in the deck, because Iron Hands can still just be a good attacker, but it is still an Iron Valiant deck at the end of the day. I guess the one issue you're going to face with Iron Crown Iron Valiant is bench preservation, because Iron Valiant's a deck that wants to put all the Iron Valiants in play for the extra damage, and Iron Crown you also want to have in play. So your bench is probably going to be a little clogged up with Crowns and Valiants if you're really trying to capitalize on the damage output that you can do with Tachyon Bits plus the Iron Crown damage boost. So that's interesting, but the Iron Hands does come up in the deck too. You can obviously build it up with the Reboot Pod and stuff. The Peak Acceleration on the one prize Miraidon can get you there. Now, this one I like. We got an Entei Gouging Fire Iron Valiant deck. Now, I think that Iron Valiant Gouging Fire is a deck that is worth trying out. Gouging Fire does a lot of damage. I guess I can pull it up here on Bulbapedia real quick here so we can quickly take a look at Gouging Fire. But yeah, Gouging Fire is basically just a stronger Entei V. It does have that attack that does 260 damage, and it cannot do the attack again until it leaves the active spot. And when you're playing a deck like Iron Valiant that already plays a ton of switching cards, it does make sense to play Gouging Fire because you can just switch out of the active, go into Tachyon Bits, do some damage, and then go back into the Gouging Fire and hit hard. And it basically is just a stronger Entei V. The only downside with Gouging Fires, of course, you do need 3 energy to do the attack as opposed to 2. That's not too bad whatsoever when you have access to Professor Sada and Magma Basin. You have 2 ways to accelerate energy to Gouging Fire. I guess the other downside of Gouging Fire is it doesn't have Fleet-Footed, which does give you more draw in a game with Entei, right? But you still have the Entei in the deck, obviously, and I don't know. I like the idea of Gouging Fire Iron Valiant a lot. I think this actually is a deck worth trying out. And then we got Iron Valiant Palkia, a deck I'm a big fan of. I've liked playing this deck in the past, and it's still decent in the rotation. Obviously, Palkia gets a little bit weaker because, of course, you do lose Melanie, so you don't have a way to build up Palkia in the late game as easily. That's like the one downside to playing the Palkia in the meta now is really it's only good for the V-Star power, and then after that, it kind of gets a bit worse because you can't really chain attacks with it. There's no Raihan in the format either. This is an interesting build. It's actually Palkia and Entei in one. So I guess that's a different way to play Palkia Entei Valiant, just kind of combining the two together. But yeah, Palkia Valiant by itself doesn't seem bad either. And we got another build here, another Palkia Entei build. I mean, I guess like the benefit of playing Entei in the deck is that you get Magma Basin. So you have 2 different attackers that are really strong. You can either swing with Palkia or Entei. And I guess in fairness, Palkia is kind of similar to Gouging Fire, where it does do 260 damage potentially, right? So maybe Palkia Entei is actually better than Gouging Fire Iron Valiant. I don't know. That's an interesting concept to play 2 of them together. And I guess it does make up for Palkia not having a way to build itself up with Melanie anymore. So you can, have Entei now as your build-up attacker because you can power Entei up in one turn with Magma Basin. So maybe it is just better. We got another Gouging Fire build here. This one does play Iron Leaf. Once again, this build can capitalize on the ability to abuse the Sada's Vitality to actually put energy onto your Gouging Fire. You got Sada, you got Basin as a way to power up the Gouging Fire. You still have the Flutter Mane in the deck too, and the Iron Leaves, 2 other good attackers, and you got the Muse and the Charizard. More of a toolboxy deck, less than an Iron Valiant deck, but still has the Iron Valiant in the deck regardless. We got another Iron Valiant Gouging Fire deck here to look at. Once again, I think this build looks pretty solid. I think this deck does look good. I think this deck has potential with the ability to do so much damage with Gouging Fire. Entei can still be played in the deck because Entei is still just a good card, but when you have Gouging Fire that can also just do so much damage, it makes sense to play it over Entei sometimes because you can still build it up fairly easily with the Basin Sada combo. And we got another future build here. Like I said, just focusing solely on the Iron Valiant as main attacker. Again, we'll have to see if this build actually has legs, because Iron Valiant EX is a pretty strong attacker when you combine the ability with the ability of Iron Crown, because it's like essentially like plus 40 a turn if you're using Tachyon Bits, if you can switch it. And then we got a Xatu Iron Valiant build to round out the Iron Valiant list here post-rotation. I have not yet tried a Xatu Iron Valiant. I guess Xatu gets a little better because you can play Buddy Poffin now, so you can actually get Natus out a lot more quicker. That's one of the issues with playing Xatu. There isn't really a great way to get Natus out quick enough because you want to get a bunch of Natus in play, but now that I guess there's Buddy Poffin, it actually gets a little bit easier to chain Natus. I have yet to try Xatu Iron Valiant, and maybe it's going to be time trying in the new format, because I don't think the deck is terrible. It does have energy acceleration with the Xatu. You can even play Reboot Pod if you want. Obviously, Prime Catcher and stuff do also go a long way. And I guess the deck also has Iron Crown it can play, which is kind of cool. Those are all the Iron Valiant decks. Again, I wanted to give Iron Valiant a look here because I think Iron Valiant is still potentially a decent deck in the new format. We just have to figure out what is the best partner. Is it Palkia? Is it still Entei? Or is it going to be the brand new Gouging Fire or Iron Crown based builds? All right, now we're going to look at the other decks here. So the Rogue stuff. So the first Rogue deck here we got is a Dialga V-Star deck. This is a deck I am super, super excited to play. Dialga V-Star Metang is looking pretty good. Now, this actually also plays Melmetal uh, EX, I think that is, which is basically just a worse Dialga V-Star. It just does a bunch of damage for each metal energy on it. But I guess the benefit of Melmetal is you can play the new Baton tool card, which we can look at. Actually, there's a couple cards we can quickly look at here. That was in that list. We have that Baton. Let's see, where's it at? Baton, Heavy Baton right here. So yeah, Heavy Baton, if the Pokemon this card is attached to has a retreat cost of exactly 4, which I'm pretty sure the Melmetal EX does, you can, and it gets knocked out, you can move it to 3 basic energy from that Pokemon to your bench Pokemon. So you can put the energy on the Melmetal, lead with Melmetal, and then when the Melmetal gets knocked out, the Heavy Baton activates, so you can put those energies onto a Dialga V-Star to build it up a little bit more quicker. So that's, I guess, the idea behind playing then. And there is a new stadium in the deck here. It's not it. Hold on, where's the new stadium at? Full Metal Lab, here it is. So, metal Pokemon, both yours and your opponent take 30 less damage from attacks. That's pretty good. I mean, metal isn't really that popular, so it's not like it's a stadium card that's going to have less value in most matchups, because it's not like everybody plays metal types. Metal is honestly potentially one of the weakest types in the game right now, besides maybe grass. So, metal definitely isn't popular, so this stadium is really only going to benefit you most of the time, which is cool. So, yeah, I'm really excited to play Metang. I think Metang's a really cool card. I'm glad they made Metang. And Metang is also a pre-release kit promo. So if you're trying to get Metangs for building decks, you want to try the Dialga deck yourself, well, good news. Metang is going to be a pre-release promo within the pre-release kits. If you're going to a bunch of pre-releases, hey, definitely try to get some Metangs. Because I think you get the promo, and then the promo deck will just have more Metangs in it. So you're already going to have like 2 or 3 Metangs just off of one kit. All right, we do have an interesting toolbox. We have an Aegislash toolbox with Scizor and Noivern. So I guess this is kind of like an anti-meta deck. We do see the Aegislash here with that ability where it's immune to V Pokemon and EX. It's kind of like the Mimikyu. It's basically just a stage 2 version of the Mimikyu. It does have Noivern. Now, I think Noivern does have potential in the new format. So the idea of playing Noivern EX in the new format is you combine it with Mist Energy. So Noivern's attack Distort prevents it from being damaged by basic Pokemon. If you put a Mist Energy on the Noivern while you do Distort, you can prevent damage and effects of attacks done to it by basic Pokemon effectively because Mist Energy prevents the effects. So, off the bat, Noivern is going to be immune to Roaring Moon EX if Mist Energy stays on it. If Roaring Moon is not playing Temple of Sinnoh or yeah, that's about it. Enhanced Hammer is not coming out until the next set. Then Roaring Moon is not going to be able to deal with the Noivern at all. The only way Noivern can be attacked is through Prime Catcher and Boss. So that's the only way. So they have to go Prime Catcher and then Boss you, or they have to go Boss and then Prime Catcher you. So they basically have to double gust your Noivern with Prime Catcher Boss or Counter Catcher Boss in order to knock it out. And that's why Noivern EX is getting some hype right now. There's other decks I've seen that do play Noivern, which maybe we can look at down the road. I do think that Noivern, though, definitely is going to be an interesting card to look at in the new meta. We can move on here to a Gengar EX deck. Now, Gengar EX, I really want to be good. Obviously, it's going to fall on the Rogue side of things, unfortunately. We can quickly look at what Gengar EX does here if you don't already know. So, Gengar EX does have that ability, 9 Curse. Whenever your opponent attaches energy from their hand to one of their Pokemon, you put 2 damage counters on that Pokemon. So, it does have that annoying ability where your opponent is punished for putting energy on their Pokemon. The problem is that's really all it does, because it's attack Tricky Steps for 2 Dark Energy. Does 160 damage. You may move an energy from your opponent's active Pokemon to one of their bench Pokemon. I guess the idea is you want to move the energy off of their active with Tricky Steps, right? So then you force them to take more damage because they have to attach another energy to their active because you moved one of the energies off with a Gengar's attack. Unfortunately, I don't think this card is like fantastic. Its ability might be better than the attack in all honesty. This could be more of a card that sees play because of the ability. To be fair, it is kind of hilarious against Shempao EX, because against Shempao, every time they Baxcalibur Super Cold to a Shempao, they have to take 20 damage per energy because of the effect of Gnawing Curse. So I guess if you stack Gengars in play against Shempao, because it doesn't say it's limited to stacking, I guess like technically Shempao can take like 200 damage just for attacking once, which is actually kind of hilarious. And Shempao looks to be a popular deck in our new format, of course. And yeah, this build here is very simplistic. It's not really playing too much because Gengar doesn't really have a lot it can really do. It actually just is straight up just a Gengar deck. There's Bibarel and Skwovet, Sidronjin. We got some Crushing Hammer. We got that League Headquarters in the deck. All good cards to combine with Gengar. There's even a Giovanni's, well, there's three Giovanni's Charisma in the deck, which allows you to attach energy to your active Gengar, but then you have to take an energy from your opponent's active Pokemon and put it back in their hand. So you're basically just trying to force your opponent to constantly play energy. We have some TMs in the deck. We got the TM Evo in the deck. You're playing a bunch of stage 1s and 2s. And there's TM Devo. It'd be pretty good to have against Charizard. I could actually see this deck being okay against Charizard. If your opponent benches Rotom or Manaphy or Jirachi or something, or if they just have a Pokemon on their bench that they don't want energy on, like honestly, if you're playing against Bibarel Charizard, you can just like tricky steps, move the dark energies over to the Bibarels every turn and make it very annoying for Charizard. Now that might be the best way to play the Gengar, is to constantly move the energy off of Charizard onto their Bibarels or the Skwovet, because your opponent does not want the energies on those Pokemon specifically. The Radiant Alakazam's kind of cool too, I guess, because of your ability. You can manipulate the damage. Yeah, this deck looks cool. More of a for fun deck, obviously, but that's kind of what this other section is. It's more of a for fun section. And I do like the idea of Gengar EX. I'm definitely excited to play it. Even if it's not the greatest card on the planet, I'm still going to try it out. And it's cool that, we now have a Gengar list we can look at if wanting to build a Gengar deck right now. We do have a Swim Freely Dugong deck here. Another rogue deck here. Basically, Dugong does have that attack that can do 40 damage. You shuffle all the water energy back in your deck, you can do 40 damage. I did do a video recently on Seeking Swim Freely Finneon, which I did like that deck a lot. Dugong definitely could be okay too. It is kind of like Seeking, where it can do a bunch of damage. You have to put the energy back in your deck. So this build, you can see, plays 4 Professor's Letter. The letter, I forget what it's called. The letter that when something gets knocked out, you get 3 energy out of your deck. And 4 Earthen Vessels. So you're really just trying to get as much energy in your hand as you can. Maybe it's worth trying out Dugong right now with those 2 cards. Letter of Encouragement. That's what it's called. Yes, okay. And the name just came back in my head. And I guess Prime Catcher's kind of cute. You can play that in the deck too. All right, we got a Wugtrio EX deck. So I think Wugtrio is coming out in this set. I'm pretty sure. Let's quickly find the Wugtrio. It's a lightning type Pokemon. All right, Wugtrio looking pretty cool. So Wugtrio does have the 2 different attacks. We got that first attack here for 1 water energy. Discard up to 3 energies from your hand. This attack does 60 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon for each card you discard in this way. So it's kind of like Goldengo, where you're discarding energy to do a powerful effect. Instead of doing a bunch of damage to the active, you get to snipe one of your Pokemon. Now, you can get rid of 3 energy, and if your opponent does not have a Manaphy in play, you can snipe for 180 damage, which honestly isn't terrible. You are a Lightning-type Pokemon, so you get some type coverage, and then you have Numbing Hold that does 120 for 2 water. During your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon can retreat. Not the worst attack ever, but for the most part, this card is going to be used for that first attack over anything else. Now, the way that we're seeing it being played here is actually with Palkia V-Star. And that actually makes sense. Palkia does synergize with the Wugtrio. You can Star Portal to your Wiglets. Palkia is just a really good backup attacker. And the Wugtrio does give you a Lightning-type attacker. So if you're playing against something like Charizard, you have a way to deal with Pidgeot a lot more quickly now. And the deck can still play the Canceling Clone in the deck, as we do see Canceling Clone with Wugtrio does make sense. You can bring in the Manaphy on the bench, use the Wugtrio's attack, and then play Canceling Clone or whatever in combination with the attack, and you can still snipe the bench. So it's like, Greninja Manaphy, except it's using Wugtrio. I kind of like it. It's a cute idea. Maybe Palkia is good with all these terrestrial Pokemon. There's also Frostlass that's a grass type. So maybe like Palkia, Wugtrio, Frostlass could be something to try out with Palkia Box, because now you have good type coverage. You have a lightning attacker, you have a water attacker with Palkia, and also a big beat stick. And you get the Frostlass EX, which is a grass Pokemon that also needs water energy like Wugtrio. So that could be something to look at. But, Wugtrio with Palkia, probably going to be the best way to play Wugtrio. Like I said, Wugtrio, Gengar, the deck we just looked at, obviously, they're just not the greatest EXs in the set. They're just more for fun rogue decks, and it's still cool to see that. All right, we got a Mill deck here. We got Gyarados Mill. Now, Pokemon Go Gyarados is, in my opinion, a worse Wugtrio. But this person did try to make work. They did win a gym battle with it, which is kind of cool. But yeah, Gyarados obviously has got that attack. You flip a coin until you get tails. For each heads, discard the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. This card actually was decent when Glimwood Tangle was in the format, but unfortunately Glimwood Tangle did rotate, and now Gyarados Pokemon Go is a lot worse because you can no longer mill the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. It is a really cool card, though. You can still mill, but you don't get to reflip your attack. Wugtrio is just obviously a better mill card, but Gyarados does have a lot more HP, and I don't know, it's cool to see this more of just like kind of a meme than anything else. We got a Tinkaton deck. Tinkaton with the ability to play the new Dunsparce. I guess we can look at the new Dunsparce here real quick. Why not? The new Dunsparce definitely is looking pretty cool. with that ability. Once you're in turn, you may draw 3 cards. If you do, you can shuffle this Pokemon and all cards attached to it back into your deck. So Dunsparce the Dunsparce is basically its own draw engine because you can use the Dunsparce. You put the Dunsparce down, and then you can bench the Dunsparce and draw 3 cards. You got to put them back in your deck. But as long as you can constantly cycle out your Dunsparces, and if you're playing a deck like Tinkaton with Buddy Poffin, Nemonas, and stuff, you have a lot of ways to draw cards. Even the Morty. Morty's a cool upgrade, too, you can play in the deck. Even though you discard a card, you can still drop the 5 cards. So you're still drawing more cards than you're discarding effectively. But yeah, there is some synergy there. I like the idea of the Dunsparce Tinkaton. Tinkaton hasn't really been able to work at all. But maybe it's time to shine with the Dunsparce. Also, the Neo Upper Energy is a cool upgrade. It's probably one of the only good uses you're going to get out of the Neo Upper Energy A-Spec card is you can play it with Tinkaton. So now, effectively, you have a 5th energy to attack your Tinkaton. Because, yeah, Tinkaton needs 2 energy to do the attack. And with Double Turbo, you can do it, but you also have Neo Upper Energy now. So now you have 5 energies that you can put on your Tinkaton to attack for a single energy attachment. Another Tinkaton list here, playing the Neo Up Energy. It's got a couple Psychic, but still playing at the Dunsparces in the deck as the core draw engine, which I do like. I think that might actually be pretty good. We got another Tinkaton. Oh my god, everyone loves Tinkaton. This one actually plays a Luxray in the deck. That's not a bad idea. I guess Luxray can help a little bit against Charizard, obviously. Which couldn't give this deck some trouble. Even though you can technically one-shot the Charizard in the late game. I guess if you take out their Pidgeot early on in the game, they can't, like, it's harder for them to Iono you, which makes sense. This deck also plays Pidgeot V with the A-Spec, or the A-Spec, the Force Seal Stone card for the V-Star power. And once again, still playing the Dunsparce, which I think is just going to have to be how you play the deck. All right, we got another Incineroar here. Well, not another, but the last video we looked at Incineroar. But I still have my hopes high for Incineroar. I think Incineroar is still a decent deck. It does actually have a Pyroar in the deck here, which I think is in the new set. Let me check, see what Pyroar does real quick. Kind of forgot about Pyroar. It's in the set, though, right? Am I trolling? No, I guess Pyroar is not in the set. Huh. Okay, well, I forget what that Pyroar does. I think it's like, isn't it do something with burn? I'm pretty sure. I forget what that Pyroar does. I couldn't remember. I don't think it's like super important. It's a 1/1 line, but ideally Incineroar EX obviously is going to be a fun archetype that I think is a little underrated. It's got that ability where attacks used by its Pokemon cost 1 colorless less for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So if your opponent fills up their bench, Incineroar can attack pretty easily. It does have the attack that requires 5 energy, but with that ability, that attack all of a sudden might only need 2 energy or even 1 energy under the right circumstances. I mean, a lot of decks, especially now that we have Buddy Poffin in the format, a lot of decks are going to fill their bench up pretty easily for Incineroar. It does 240, 260 basically with the burn damage. It does hit really hard. There is the Linton and Torracat you can play in combination with the Relicanth. The Relicanth here, when it's on the bench, your evolved Pokemon can use the Pokemon underneath its evolution as the attack. So if you evolve it from Linton, you can copy Linton's attack with Relicanth, and Linton's got an attack where it does a bunch of damage for each damage counter on it. And Incineroar does have a lot of HP, so I don't know, man. I feel like Incineroar definitely is going to be a deck that people are sleeping on. We haven't seen as many lists for it recently in Japan. It doesn't even have its own category on the deck recipe page, which is honestly kind of bizarre because I do think Incineroar EX is a pretty strong card. This build playing the Bibarel engine over Pidgeot. I was talking about the Pidgeot engine in the last video being good with Incineroar, but honestly, looking at it more now, yeah, maybe it'll be better with the ability to pair it with Bibarel, because you don't lose as easily to like Greninja snipes on your Pidgeys and stuff. It makes sense. But I do really like Incineroar. I'm excited to try it out. I think it actually is pretty good. We got a Torterra deck here now. When we started off one of our last videos looking at decks from Japan, it was with a Torterra deck. This one is a different Torterra deck. It is playing a Venusaur, a bunch of Venusaurs actually. We got the Radiant Venusaur and we have Venusaur EX. I'm pretty sure that is the same Venusaur EX from Pokemon 151. Pretty sure it's the same one. I think it's a promo version or something like that. I'm pretty sure it's the same Venusaur. I could be wrong, though. Maybe I am wrong. But yeah, Torterra obviously does much damage. For your grass Pokemon in play, you got the Grotle to help you out. I guess we can quickly pull up the Torterra EX real quick here. Yeah, but Torterra definitely pretty good grass type attacker. 340 HP, very bulky. It's got Forest March. Once again, doing 30 damage for each of your grass Pokemon in play. Combine that with like the Grotle, which gets your grass Pokemon out of your deck every turn. It's honestly a pretty strong card. I like this build too. It's actually playing some interesting cards. It does have the giant Hero Cape in the deck, which is kind of cool. The Hero Cape does give Torterra a lot of HP. All of a sudden, Torterra is looking pretty bulky. And then, of course, you can play the Heavy Baton with it. I think the Venusaur EX also can play the new Baton card to move energy around. It's an interesting idea. I mean, there's quite a few ways you could theoretically build Torterra. Even though grass types are one of the weaker types in the meta right now, in my opinion, there's a lot of good grass Pokemon you could theoretically put in a Torterra EX deck. So it's cool to see. We got a Rotom V-Star deck here. Now, Rotom V-Star looks kind of cool in the new format. I mean, it kind of just stays the same. You kind of keep everything in the deck. You got the Rotoms and generators. Most of the tools stay intact. Obviously, you can play Emergency Board, which is a cool one of you can have in the deck here for a new tool. And there's also the Explorer's Expedition supporter, which actually does give the deck a bit of a big boost because now all of a sudden you have a good way to discard stuff. So let's look up where that card is. Explorer's Expedition or Explorer's Guidance, whatever it's called. We look at the top 6 cards of your deck. Put 2 of the cards in your hand, discard the other cards. So you take 2, discard 4 cards. That's not bad with Rotom, right? Because you can discard a bunch of tool cards for Rotom's attack with the effect of the Explorer. And of course, you do get to play even the new Hero Cape A-Spec card you can put on the Rotom 2 for some more health. Rotom only has 250 HP. It's a little bit fragile. So, I don't know. Rotom V-Star looks like it actually could be a fun deck to try out in the new meta. It actually doesn't look terrible. It's got some decent upgrades. You can play all the TMs, too, with Cramorant. Because you lost zone all the tools with Rotom's attack, you can use Cramorant at a point in the game because you put so many tools in the lost zone. Cramorant's ability activates. And you can play Crisis Punch, stuff like TM Devo with it, too, which is kind of cute. We got a Noivern the Dunsparce anti-meta deck. Now, Noivern doesn't look bad in this new format. Again, being able to be immune to basic Pokemon is pretty strong, and there's a lot of basic decks in our new meta. Now, this build's got a lot going on. It is playing a Dunsparce engine. It's also playing 4 Mimikyu. That's probably going to be the way you try to beat Charizard. Noivern isn't very good against Charizard because Charizard is an evolution. It can attack Noivern if you try to do that Distort attack to be immune to basics. Well, when you have Mimikyu, you can make it even more awkward for Charizard decks to deal with you. And that's basically the idea here behind this anti-meta Noivern deck. Noivern EX definitely is looking like it could be decent in the new meta. This build is also playing Patrol Cap. Now, Patrol Cap's a very interesting tool that does prevent your opponent from milling you. So if you're playing against Great Tusk, mill, they actually can't deck you out, which is kind of funny. And then we, of course, have those Mist Energies in the deck, a very strong Special Energy in combination with Distort, because it's really good against Roaring Moon, really good against any basic deck. Like, Noivern can honestly solo against Ancient Box and stuff, like, or Future Box. Any deck just playing basic Pokemon basically gets soloed by Noivern EX with Mist Energy, which is really hilarious. I got another Gyarados Mill deck. Yo, what's with all the Gyarados Mill? That's crazy. No Wugtrio. Yo, where's the love for my boy Wugtrio in the rotation? But I guess Gyarados Mills, it's a meme, obviously. It does have hand clippers in the deck, also playing the Snorlax. It does actually have that new Wally supporter where you can immediately evolve your Magikarp into Gyarados. So that's cool. I guess you have Eerie, which is a decent supporter. Gyarados is less, it's less, how do you say it? It's more consistent than Wugtrio because you're not relying on reversal energy every turn, where Gyarados just needs a single energy attachment. All right, now this one's cool. We got a Banette deck. Now, Banette EX actually does seem promising in this new format, mainly because Rare Candy's popular and because Banette does gain that new supporter card that lets you go Banette on your first turn going second. So there is some potential for Banette to work. Another card that I think is a decent card to try out in this new meta is Aerodactyl V-Star. Aerodactyl V-Star doesn't do too much apart from, like, literally just its V-Star power. So the idea of playing Aerodactyl is Lugia V-Star. Hey, man, it just won the Champions League. Lugia is going to be a very popular deck in the new format, at least at the start. I mean, we'll have to see if Lugia ends up actually being that good of a deck in our new meta. But it is looking like Lugia V-Star is going to be a promising deck in our new format, and Aerodactyl V-Star is going to capitalize on that with that Ancient Star V-Star power, where you can just shut off Lugia's V-Star power from working. And if Lugia can't do its V-Star power, they ain't setting up, they ain't spamming Archeops, Cinccino, and all that stuff. So this kind of anti-meta deck does make sense. Also playing Paldean Clodsire, which is kind of weird. It's actually an interesting idea to play that over something like Brute Bonnet. But I guess Clodsire can still attack. Clodsire poisons the opponent's active, but I guess Brute Bonnet does too, and maybe that's why you don't want to play Brute Bonnet. You do have that Stadium card here. I guess we can look at that real quick. The new Stadium Clodsire combo makes sense. I mean, maybe it is better than Brute Bonnet, actually, but I pulled it up earlier. Yeah, Peerless Jungle. During Pokemon Checkup, put 2 more damage counters on each poison non-dark Pokemon. So basically, this allows you to do more damage to poison Pokemon that aren't dark types. But this is basically Radiant Sneasler's ability, and then of course with Sneasler, you're doing even more damage, I think. So that also stacks, which is kind of cool. So I don't know, Banette EX definitely looks like it could be good in combination with potentially the poison Jungle Stadium. Maybe if you're going to play Clodsire, or maybe if you want to just play Brute Bonnet. I guess both of them kind of work. And then, of course, Sneasler. Aerodactyl's nice, because then you just kind of have a better matchup against Lugia V-Star. You're just kind of an anti-meta deck. Yeah, Banette definitely looks like it could be good. And I am definitely interested to try out Banette with that Salvatore supporter card. It looks pretty good, and I like the idea of playing Aerodactyl in this format. Even if you're not playing with Banette, like, theoretically, you can play Aerodactyl in, like, almost anything if you really wanted to. We remember how good Aerodactyl V-Star was during the Lugia meta, right? All right, we have a Clefairy deck. Now, Clefairy does get one new upgrade, I think, with the new set, and that's basically Buddy Poffin. Buddy Poffin is a great card to play with the Clefairy. The Clefairy deck, obviously, you want to put a bunch of Clefairies in play and then spam the ability and put a bunch of energy on your Clefairies with that ability, Moonwatching Party. Well, now there's a really easy way to get Clefairies out. I mean, there are a lot of Pokemon search for Clefairy right now in our meta. Of course, we do have access to cards like Battle VIP, Fog Crystal, Level Ball, Nest Ball, stuff. But Buddy Poffin is great because Buddy Poffin just guarantees you 2 Clefairies in play for free, which is really good when you're trying to spam the Clefairy's ability. And that's basically what makes this deck kind of fun. And you get Clefable EX in the deck, obviously. Interesting stuff. It's playing an Unknown V. Unknown V has an attack where if you have 1 prize remaining, you can just take the last prize and win the game. Basically, it's kind of like Slowbro from Pokemon Go. We got another Tinkaton deck playing at the Dunsparce and at the Luxray engine. And then we do have an interesting deck here. We got a Brambleghast Fortress deck. We did look at this earlier in the last video, I think. This one actually got top 8 in a tournament. I guess we can pull up what the Brambleghast does if anyone didn't already know. Brambleghast does have that ability. It gets plus 50 HP for each prize card your opponent has taken. It already has, I think, 100 HP. Yeah, 100 HP. And then it's got the attack that does 80 damage, and you flip a coin for each energy on it, doing 80 damage for each heads. Now, that's a really interesting card because in the late game, when your opponent's taking a bunch of prizes, Brambleghast has a ton of HP. You can combine that with the tool's Luxurious Cape and the Hero Cape to give it even more HP. And then, of course, you got Fortress EX, which can put a bunch of energy onto your Brambleghast and also activate its HP boost because you're giving your opponent 2 prizes when using Fortress EX's ability. So I really like that idea. It's a really cool concept. And I mean, we looked at a few of these lists already, but I definitely like the idea of Brambleghast Fortress. Brambleghast does have that coin flip attack, so it's a little bit of a risky attack, but you can play reverse energy with it to do more damage. I don't know. I really do think Brambleghast Fortress can be a really fun meme deck. We'll see if it's Bad Deck Friday material or if it's just going to be a regular deck, because I am very excited to try that out. All right, here we go. We got a Wugtrio Mill deck. Now, Wugtrio Mill, I mean, yeah, just kind of Wugtrio Mill. It just does Wugtrio Mill things. Kind of like the Gyarados deck. It is playing Mimikyu. It's got Snorlax in deck. You know, everyone's favorite card. Still the reversals. I guess Wugtrio Mill can play stuff like Eerie now, which is nice to slow the opponent down. You got the counter catchers in the deck. Playing League Headquarters over anything like Calamitous Wasteland is definitely an interesting inclusion. We got another Metang Dialga deck playing Melmetal. So I guess it's more of a Melmetal Metang deck. But again, you can play the Heavy Baton. So realistically, with the Melmetal having a 4 retreat means that you can Metang energy to it, play the Heavy Baton. When the Melmetal gets knocked out, your Heavy Baton will activate. You can move the energy off of the Melmetal to your other Melmetal or even Dialga V-Star. So it's basically the idea of playing Melmetal. Melmetal is basically a worse Dialga because it doesn't have that V-Star power, but it does work with Heavy Baton. So maybe there is some value to playing the Melmetal with the Heavy Baton over Dialga. But you still probably want to play a Dialga. I mean, there's no reason not to play a Dialga V-Star because you still get Star Chronos, which is ridiculous, right? But yeah, Melmetal maybe can be okay. I mean, it does have a lot of HP. I think it has 300 HP for a Stage 1 EX Pokemon. It's bulky. It does do still a lot of damage. I don't think it does as much damage as Dialga can do with as much energy, but it can still hit hard, and it can cycle the energy, and you can kind of just snowball the energy with the Heavy Baton combo, which makes sense. All right, we got a Dragonite EX deck. Oh, man, Dragonite EX. I mean, I guess the one card the deck does gain is the Luminous Energy, which you can put on your Dragonite EX to attack. Or not Luminous Energy, the Neo Up Energy, sorry, that's what it's called. You can put the Neo Up Energy on your Dragonite so you can attack for the 1 energy cost. It's a bit of a risky card. It relies on coin flips, but again, more of a meme than anything else. We got another Torterra EX deck. Now, that's actually playing Beautyfly in the deck. Now, Beautyfly has an ability where it allows you to draw cards until you have 6 in your hand. It's a stronger Bibarel. Bibarel draws you up to 5. Beautyfly draws you up to 6. It also plays the new Rabsca. Now, that's one of the big new cards in the set that I think a lot of people might be sleeping on is Rabsca. So Rabsca's got that ability. It's basically a built-in Jirachi and Manaphy. However, it is on a Stage 1 Pokemon, which is the downside. Prevent all damage and effects of attacks used by your opponent's Pokemon done your bench Pokemon. One of the benefits of Rabsca, though, is it actually is really good against TM Devolution. Jirachi doesn't block TM Devo. Neither does Manaphy. Rabsca does, on your bench anyway. It's not your active, obviously. But Rabsca does look like it could be a promising card. Even if you want to play it in Torterra, obviously stops Sableye, which I don't think Sableye is going anywhere. In fact, Lost Zone, Box, and Giratina are actually getting a little bit popular now in Japan's rotation format. So Rabsca could be a good card to pair. It is a grass type. You can play it with the Grotle to search out your Pokemon. Yeah, I don't know. Torterra does look kind of cool. Playing the Neo Up Energy as the A-Spec, which allows your Torterra to use 1 energy for the attack. Yeah, cool stuff, cool stuff. All right, here's a funny meme. We got an Omastar V deck, the Diet Wish version of Lugia V-Star. But Omastar does allow you to use that first attack to put 2 Archons into play, and then the following turn, you can evolve into Archeops. But Omastar frees up a lot of space. You're not now having to play a bunch of Lugia V-Star cards like Mazagoza and, the V-Star line itself. You don't have to rely as heavily on discarding Archeops. You can kind of play into more of a toolboxy deck. You have more space. As you can see, this deck plays 4 Cinccino because now you have access to more bench space and more room in general because you're not playing as many Lugias, which is kind of cool. Omastar's not as good as Lugia, but it is still cool to play. And I'm actually working on trying an Omastar deck out in our current meta right now because I think it's a really funny card. But yeah, Archeops Omastar with Cinccino, not a bad idea. Cinccino, obviously, it's a good card. It does a lot of damage, and it did win the Champions League for a reason. We got another interesting anti-meta deck. It's a Scizor Toolbox deck here, playing Luxray and Slowbro. This is kind of going to be the new Zorobox, even though, obviously, Zoroark is gone. You still have those type coverages. You get Scizor Cleaver and Luxray and Charizard as an attacker. Pretty similar to how Zoroark played. You got the Curly Engine. You're just obviously not playing Zoroark anymore. We looked at a list earlier in the last video that played low kicks in the deck, which kind of replaces the Scovillain. I guess you could still theoretically play Scovillain, though, with Reverse Energy for Charizard, I guess. It's not as good because you can't Zoroark it, so you can only play like a 1-1 or 2-2 line. Maybe that's not terrible. Another Tinkaton to Dunsparce deck here, playing Luxray, playing Mawile. Interesting. We got another Rotom V-Star deck here. Kind of cool stuff. We just looked at one, but yeah, Rotom V-Star, again, looks kind of cool in the new meta. We got, of course, a Tinkaton deck once again. Tinkaton to Dunsparce, baby. We got a Feraligatr deck. Now, we did look at some Feraligatr lists earlier, but I guess I can show you what Feraligatr does once again, if you don't already know. And also, fun fact about Feraligatr, it is going to be in the pre-release kit. As you can see, it's a pre-release promo, so you can pull Feraligatr out of the kit. It's actually not a bad card. It's got that ability. Once you're in turn, you can put 5 damage counters on this Pokemon. If you do, during this turn, attacks used by this Pokemon do 120 more damage to your opponent's active. Your main attack does 160 damage. So you use that ability and you do 280 damage for just 2 energy. You are a stage 2, so you can play reverse energy with it if you want to use it for that. You can also Star Portal energy to it with Palkia, or you can play it with even the Neo Upper Energy A-Spec card. Really cool stuff. And yeah, Feraligatr is going to be a pre-release kit promo. So if you're somebody who's a big fan of Feraligatr and Totodile and you want to try this deck, because it's actually like the first decent Feraligatr we've gotten in a while, there you go. Metang and Feraligatr are both pre-release kit promos. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. We got a Quaquaval EX deck. I did a video on Quaquaval recently, but Quaquaval does have that hit and run attack, and one of the new hit and run partners is to play the Flutter Mane when it's in the active. Your opponent's Pokemon in the active have no ability. So Flutter Mane is going to be the new hit and run partner for the Quaquaval over playing Klefki. There are some upsides to Klefki. It blocks all basic Pokemon, not just one Pokemon like Flutter Mane does, but it also makes sense too. But you can also play the Neo Up Energy in the deck too for Quaquaval. Quaquaval's not a bad card. It does decent damage. Hit and run can be annoying to deal with. We see Pidgeot EX in the deck too as your kind of backup engine. We got a Cofagrigus deck here with Xatu. Playing Iron Hand's actually interesting. Kind of makes sense. You set up damage with Cofagrigus. Ampy very much out of nowhere. Build it up with Xatu. Xatu can put energy on Iron Hands, basically. Cool stuff, cool stuff. I like this build. Kind of a meme, obviously, but, it did get top 16. I guess it can beat Charizard, theoretically, because you have Mimikyus in the deck. You have Team Devo. You just obviously don't be as aggressive with your Cofagrigus against Charizard. Another Incineroar deck. This one does have Pidgey on the deck, and it does have Bibarel, so kind of splitting the difference between the two. Plays the Rabsca in the deck, which I do like. I like Rabsca. Is it better than Jirachi Manaphy in a deck like this? I guess we'll have to see. But again, I'm really excited to play Incineroar. I'm glad somebody has a list here that is looking pretty good. Incineroar EX, like I said, looking like it could be a good deck. It's underrated. Very underrated card. And happy to see another list. Ooh, an Arcanine EX Rapidash deck. Now, Rapidash, it's a card that I don't think anybody remembers. So Rapidash has an ability. You can discard a Fire Energy from your hand, and then your Fire Pokemon do 30 more damage. You can actually make your Pokemon stronger with Rapidash. It's an interesting card, and I guess you compare with Arcanine. I'm actually working on doing another Arcanine EX video very soon, too. But Arcanine EX does have an attack that is 250. Play that with Rapidash, and it's also got that attack that allows you to do more damage for each damage counter on the Arcanine, so you can punish your opponent for attacking the Arcanine, which is kind of cool. So there you go. We got another Torterra deck. Now, this one's not playing Torterra EX. It's actually just a one-prize attacking Torterra deck, so that's fine too. Torterra EX is obviously a strong card. It's a two-prizer, though, and it doesn't do as much damage as the normal Evo Press Torterra does. And this one did actually get top 4, which is cool, so it actually did pretty decent. You got triple Luxray in the deck, so you can chase down the Pidgeots, the Palkias, and the Lugias pretty easily. The Bibarel engine, actually, a 4-3 Bibarel engine, you're going to get those bibs set up pretty easily. And then, of course, the Torterra in the deck. You play the Pidgeot with the Force Seal Stone. Pidgeot, you can put it back in the deck so you can, not have a basic in play. We got another Rotom V-Star deck here playing the Hawlucha and the Crams. No Miraidon, though. And we got a Palkia deck here. Palkia Palafin Lost Box. Crazy pile deck. I mean, I did a video on Palafin Lost Box recently, too. It was kind of interesting. Check that out. We got another Feraligatr build here. Once again, playing Palkia, which seems like it could be good with Feraligatr. There's a lot of ways you can theoretically play Feraligatr. You don't have to play it with Palkia, because you can play the Neo Up Energy, and you can play Reverse Energy with Feraligatr, if you so please. But yeah, cool stuff. All right, here's one that's cool. I did a video on this deck, too. Ursaluna Control. Now, this list here is where I did get inspiration for that video, and I started to build a list around this list. But yeah, Ursaluna Control. Like I said, you got the attack Peak Hunt. I just said it again. That's not what it was called. I forget what the attack was. But anyways, you can use Ursaluna's attack to get 2 cards back in your hand. So you can kind of loop Charon's Carry, you can loop Turo every turn. You got the new Hero's Cape. That's one of the big upgrades, is Hero's Cape and Mist Energy. Now you have Mist Energy, which can help a lot against Roaring Moon. And then obviously you have the Hero Cape, which you can also play to give Ursaluna more HP, make it harder to KO. You can deck your opponent out with Chandelure. Again, just being able to loop resources is insane. If you want to see gameplay with this Ursaluna Control deck, definitely go check out the main channel. It was a video I did last week if you want to see it in action. Yo, another Omastar Cinccino deck. Let's go, baby. That's cool stuff. I mean, I love to see it. Looks pretty fun. We got a Spidops Venomoth control-y kind of deck here. I mean, not bad. I mean, you can get Taroncha and Venonats out, and I guess Kricketot a lot easier now that you have Buddy Poffin. And then, of course, you still have the Venomoth. Item Lock is still really strong in this new format. You can play, well, I guess this build doesn't play it. You can technically play that new Salvatore card that allows you to go into Item Lock on the first turn, like you have with Bayonet. You could theoretically do the same thing with the Venomoth. We got another Fortress Brambleghast list here. Again, pretty cool stuff. Ooh, we got a Walking Wake deck here. We haven't really looked at many Walking Wake decks, I don't think. I'm surprised to see it didn't have its own like deck category. But I guess Walking Wake is like the weakest link of the 3 Johto dog Pokemon. It does have that ability where damage from attacks-based Pokemon aren't affected by any effects, so you do get to shred through stuff like Manaphy. And then, of course, you have... Or, not Manaphy, Mimikyu, sorry. You have that attack that does 120 damage, and if your opponent's active Pokemon is already affected by a special condition, you can do 120 more damage. So you probably have to play that with Brute Bonnet to do the most damage. But being an ancient Pokemon means, of course, you build the Walking Wake up with Sada. You can actually go Sada, attach Double Turbo to build it up in a single turn. So it can do a lot of damage. It is a little bit more combo-based, so again, you have to play Brute Bonnet and Ancient Capsule, which you don't mind already playing Ancient Booster Capsule, because, again, the Walking Wake is an ancient Pokemon. Yo, we got a Kingdra Basculegion deck. That's kind of fun. I did a video on Kingdra 2 on the main channel a couple months ago. If you want to go check out gameplay that you can. It basically has like an attack that can snipe a Pokemon for a ton of damage when you just you reveal a bunch of energies on the top of your deck. Really cool deck. Wigglytuff EX. Now, Wigglytuff EX does lose Path of Peak, which is good for the deck, because now Wigglytuff can actually use its ability at all times, because you don't have to worry about Path anymore. When it has a special energy on it, it gets like 100 extra HP. You can combine that with Hero's Cape to give it even more HP, and there's even Rigid Man to make it a little bit more bulkier, too. And you do have that Balloon Therapy Wigglytuff, so you do have a pseudo energy acceleration system for your Wigglytuff. Interesting, this deck is also playing Kangaskhan EX deck. That's an interesting card. More of a coin flip attacker, but yeah. We got a Whiscash Mill deck here. An interesting build of Whiscash Mill, actually playing Koraidons and Reversal Energy to try to mill the opponent. I mean, yeah, it's like Wugtrio, like Gyarados, just that one mill attacker that can mill potentially like 3 to 4 cards a turn. Great Tusk Mill's probably going to be better than all 3 of those mill decks combined, but cool stuff. And the last deck here, because now we're going back to where we were like this before, so we've already looked at these decks already, but we do have an Arctina list here. A bit of a weird Arctina pile. It's also playing Lost Zone stuff, so it's not really an Arctina pile like Judge and everything. It's actually trying to lean more into Lost Zone stuff with Colress, so you're actually trying to get access to Sableye. It's also playing Pidgeot EX deck. That's a card you don't usually see in Arceus Tina, so I don't know, it's a really interesting way to play it. I've seen this before, where Arctina decks do try to use Sableye with Colress and Vacuums, and Lost Impact obviously can get you there too. It's a little bit more clunky, though, obviously. No Comfey in the deck either. But yeah, cool stuff. Again, really cool to look at some of these rogue decks from Temporal Forces. Some cool stuff. We got the Walking Wake Feraligatr looking pretty cool. I'm excited, man. I cannot wait for the new set. A lot of Tinkaton, dude. Tinkaton to Dunsparce is looking pretty good. Matang looking kind of cool. The new Wugtrio, stuff like that. Yeah, I'm just excited. The Gengar EX deck looking kind of sick, too. I don't know. Just looking at these decks making me more excited. Of course, again, pre-releases are this weekend, and I cannot wait to get my hands on some pre-release kits to play some of the new cards. It's going to be a good time, but I hope you all enjoyed. This has been a long one, so I'm going to wrap it up here, but I'll leave a link to Pokebook down below if you want to go check out this site yourself and look at all the decks I did look at. We did also look at those Iron Valiant decks, of course, with the Gouging Fire and the Palkias and stuff. I'm still interested to see where Iron Valiant can go. Hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you on another video. Bye-bye.